Hi. In this lecture, I want to talk about Thrasymachus' view of justice. This occurs in Book 1 of Plato's Republic, and it will also give us a good idea of how Socrates' dialectic works in action. Now, Thrasymachus was an ancient sophist who claimed that justice is only the advantage of the stronger. Might makes right. Each society, says Thrasymachus, has its own ruling party who dominates the lives of other people in that society. So a tyrant in a tyranny defines what justice is in that society. In a democracy, it's the rule of the people who decide what justice is. In an aristocracy, it's the aristoi, the best, who do that. There's nothing to justice apart from this. Hence, justice is not natural. It's not like a tree or a river or gravity, but rather it's something that we create by convention in any given society. Now, this means, according to Thrasymachus, that disobeying the authorities is unjust because they define what justice is. But then there's a catch, says Socrates, because it seems as though the rulers can actually make bad decisions, because their decisions might paradoxically ultimately lead to their own disadvantage, even their own downfall. Take the case of apartheid South Africa. The white supremacist South African government ultimately caused its own downfall by supporting a racist policy. In the case of the U.S., think of Richard Nixon. In the case of Watergate, in attempting to cover up Watergate, he ultimately caused his own downfall as president, narrowly escaping impeachment only by resigning office. So, should we actually obey the rulers or not? Well, if they can be mistaken in a particular case, then in that case, if we obey them, we'll be doing what's not to their advantage. In other words, we'll be doing what is to their disadvantage. So obeying them would actually be unjust in that case. But also, if we disobeyed them, we would ironically be doing what is to their advantage. So we see then that disobeying the authorities can actually be just if the authorities are mistaken. Thrasymachus could get around this problem by saying that justice is merely what appears to be the advantage of the ruler. So one might say that a ruler could argue with an underling, hey, set me on fire. No, I'm really serious. This is to my advantage. But that seems foolish, because we wouldn't say that he's really doing something that's to his advantage just because he happened to have a bizarre belief that setting himself on fire really would benefit him. Obviously, that would be foolish. Justice has to be more than what appears to be advantageous to us. It should be what's truly advantageous to us. So instead, Thrasymachus will ask, well, Socrates, do you imagine that I call someone that makes a mistake stronger when he's making a mistake? Put another way, no one is truly skilled, says Thrasymachus, when he makes a mistake. I'm a mathematician only when I don't make an error in a calculation. And I'm a ruler only when I don't make foolish mistakes as a ruler. In a case in which I make a mistake as a ruler, I'm only trying to be a ruler. And in a case when I make a mistake as a mathematician, I'm only trying but failing at being a mathematician. But is this really right? Is it true to say that a ruler only rules when he or she avoids errors? Well, put another way, is a doctor only a doctor when he or she fails to commit malpractice? In other words, is a doctor only a doctor when he or she fails to commit an error? Most people would probably say, well, obviously the person's still a doctor or still a ruler or still a mathematician, even though he or she might make a mistake. So Thrasymachus tries a different approach. He says, rulers are actually like shepherds, Socrates. They fatten their flock and then they slaughter them. Rulers are meant to benefit from the ruled. But Socrates says, no, that doesn't make any sense. Rulers are there in order to benefit those over whom they rule. Now, who's right on this point? Well, Socrates gives an interesting analogy here. He points out that every art and every science actually aims at benefiting something other than the practitioner of that art or science. So the point of medicine is not to benefit the doctor, but to benefit the patient. The point of being a horse trainer is to benefit a horse and by extension, the horse's owner. The point of automotive repair is not to benefit the mechanic, but to benefit the car owner. So shouldn't a true ruler also do what is to the advantage of the ruled? For Thrasymachus, this seems unbelievably naive. You and I are simply pawns in a scheme in our society, in any given society, which is overseen by and controlled by the rulers, according to Thrasymachus. Now, Thrasymachus initially said that justice was the advantage of the stronger, but since we saw that the stronger can make mistakes, clearly that definition doesn't quite work. He begins to get a little annoyed with Socrates, and he says, okay, well, try this other definition. Justice, according to you, is simple-mindedness. In other words, Socrates, you can be just, you can be virtuous, you can be honest, you can be respectful, but you're always going to be at a disadvantage if you try to do that. An unjust person, what you're calling unjust, is really a person that is able to look after his or her own interest. So I don't want you to be just. I think everybody should be unjust. Complete injustice is more profitable than justice when it's complete. But then Socrates wants to know, isn't justice something that promotes a kind of harmony and peace? Wouldn't we be better off in a society with just people? And even Thrasymachus admits that a group of thieves, while they act unjustly towards other people, have to act justly towards one another. So it seems as though justice is actually like a virtue that's required in all life. Even a criminal would need allies, would need good health, would need careful deliberation, would need to coordinate their actions with other people to decide what day do you want to rob the bank, or how are we going to get away with committing this particular crime, and how are we going to split up our proceeds from the robbery, and so on. If we allow our desires to take advantage of us, then our lives will tend towards excess and will be, according to Socrates, rather unjust people. By extension, in a society that's incredibly unjust, where the desires of the rulers or desires of the people at large take precedence over everything else, how can we possibly have a society that functions well? So for Socrates, even an unjust person or an unjust society needs to obey some reasonable limits to his or her behavior. And that indeed is his challenge to Thrasymachus, and that's the argument that Socrates tries to present throughout the rest of the Republic.